Hi everyone, Amber here from So Majestic. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today I'm going to be sewing up the Willow Wristlet. It's named after one of my nieces, and I think it's a little bit of a unique bag. I've been going to a lot of concerts this summer, and a lot of them require a smaller bag, so this is perfect. So here we are. This is what it looks like as a wristlet. It is about 6.5 inches wide, 6.5 inches tall, and it can also be converted to a crossbody. It's a little unique in that the zipper is it's like a diamond shape, and I have put 2 D-rings on the sides so you can add a crossbody strap or just use it as a wristlet. So inside, it has card slots on one side. There's 3 card slots, and the other side is just blank. You could do another type of pocket if you wanted, for sure. And it is finished with binding. So I know that can be a little intimidating, but I encourage you not to be intimidated. So this is what it looks like as a wristlet. And I wrote the pattern using just a chain for a crossbody, but you could absolutely use webbing or make your own crossbody strap. And I am going to show you how it sits. So I'm short. I'm only about 5'2". So this chain is long enough for me at 44 inches. So you can see it sits like the diamond shape. And what I really like is that when you open it, the card slots are angled. So it's really easy to just stick your hand in and pull the card out at an angle. And I really like that because a lot of my wristlets that I had do not have card slots. And if I'm going somewhere and I can't bring my wallet, then all my cards fall around, and I can't stand that. So that's why I wrote that in. So yeah, absolutely. You can adapt this in a variety of ways. I wrote it for vinyl on the outside, but you could make it with cotton woven, waterproof canvas. You can switch up. I use Decaville, but you could use foam, fusible fleece. My testers tried it all those ways, and different materials worked out differently. So in the video today, we are going to make this one. So same exact style, just this one has the maps on it. And again, when you look inside, it has the card slots. So I hope you give it a chance and enjoy it. Let me know what you think in the comments. I hope you subscribe, follow my channel, and thank you for joining me today. All right, so I'm going to show you the materials that I am using today to make the Willow Wristlet. My main fabric or print on the outside is this vinyl with a map print from My Punk Broidery, and it does have the white backing. It's super flexible. So I am using Decaville Light and Sofuse, which is from Castine Handcrafted. Sofuse is similar to SF101. So I'm gonna actually use both since mine is more flexible. I have for the inside some water resistant canvas from Mormino. And I'm going to do my card slot pockets out of this cotton woven. This was just purchased at Walmart. And because I'm using the cotton woven, I am going to put the Sofuse on it, or if you use SF101, anything that you have, any materials you're using that are flexible, you definitely want to make sure that you interface or stabilize. So I'll show you a little bit more in that next part. I have, if you want to do optional rivets, I have this little kit. It's linked from Amazon. It has multiple sizes. It works well for me. We are binding today, so I prefer to use the 1/2 inch wide double fold bias tape. I'm not sure which color yet, so I just put them both out. I find this doesn't crease, but there's a new product from Fabric Therapy that sticks to where you need to put it. That looks great. Or you could cut like a 1-inch strip of waterproof canvas. But my personal preference right now is to use pre-made bias tape. I also have a 44-inch chain. That works well for me as a crossbody chain, but I'm also short, so you could grab a size that is best for you, or you could make your own crossbody or shoulder strap. I have 2 1/2-inch D-rings and a 1/2-inch snap hook because I'm going to make the crossbody and wristlet option. And I have a size 5 zipper pull and size 5 nylon zipper tape here. So these are the materials that I will be using today. So I have a variety of tools I'll be using today. I have 3 different rulers. They're all good for something different in the pattern. So I like having a variety. My rotary cutter, what's not pictured here, is the mat that I use. For thread, I am using Tex 35 from Wizard Stitchery. It's my favorite thread. I have like all their colors from them, and I sew on a domestic, so 35 works great in both the top and in my bobbin. I have a seam ripper stiletto combo, multiple feet as far as I use my regular one, but also a zipper foot and a Teflon foot. Microtex 9014 needles, tailor's chalk. I also prefer to use this blue washable marking pen, a regular pen. I have snips, and I prefer to use clips over pins. And I'm also going to use an arbor press to set my rivets. All right, so I just finished cutting out all the pattern pieces, the stabilizer, and the interfacing, and attached it. So I want to take a second to talk about some things. So if you are making the crossbody, it is going to sit like a diamond shape. So if you are using a print, you want to make sure that your piece is angled like this. And on the back of these, I put interfacing on and the Decoville stabilizer because this was really flimsy vinyl. So you're going to have 2 of the outer pieces and 1 lining if you are making the card slots. If you are leaving out the card slots, you'll need 2 of these. And you might have noticed that it's gray instead of the blue that I showed. I did not have enough of the blue, so I just changed the color. I'm going to be doing the card slot option, so I have a piece of fabric that I am using for that. That is interfaced on the back, and then I have my 2 side pieces. So these 2 side pieces are going to be attached to the card slot to create that lining, which is why you only need the 1. So this is the Gusset piece B, and now the Gusset piece B cuts out vertical, but if you are again using a directional print, I turned mine because I wanted mine to be horizontal, so you could see where it says Australia here. So just be mindful that if you're using directional prints, you might want to rearrange how you cut them out. This is my D-ring connector piece. I did add an extra piece of stabilizer just because it was very soft. In the pattern, I write it for a 1/2-inch D-ring. Many of my testers preferred a 3/4 inch. So if you would like to make yours a little bit wider, you're going to have to adjust this piece. And then I'm going to do the wristlet and the crossbody. So this is the wristlet strap. And then the 2 zipper gusset pieces. So we are going to use these to create our zipper gusset, and they are both interfaced and have stabilizer, as well as 2 lining pieces. So we have everything cut out and ready to go. Okay, so we're going to start with our card slot piece first. We are going to prep it before we do any of the folding. So I have this here. This is the front. So on the wrong sides, you are going to look at the measurement given in the pattern and make sure you are lining it up. And I'm using my water soluble pen here, even though it's on the back and it won't be seen. So you're going to mark your first line and you are going to write WS for wrong side, because we are going to be folding on those lines, and that helps so you remember which line you are folding to. And then for your second line, you are going to write right side, RS. And I'm using a ruler that I got from Mormino. It is perfect for this. I prefer to measure, and again, the third line, you're going to mark wrong side. I prefer to measure from each line and go up. You could also use a like a 24-inch ruler and just go by the measurements in the actual pattern. I also gave measurements if you were measuring from the bottom and going up. But for me, I prefer to mark it like this. This way, I'm double checking each one. It's much easier for me to get confused when there's larger numbers. And you want to make sure that you are marking as straight as possible, because like I said, we will be folding on these lines. So far I have 5 lines. I have wrong side, right side, wrong side, right side, wrong side. Okay, and I'm just going to double check that I marked all my lines. Yes, you should have 6 lines. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then you should have a larger piece at the top. When I gave the measurements to cut out this piece, there is some wiggle room at the top, because right now I'm using cotton, but it will fold differently than waterproof canvas or water resistant canvas, vinyl. So depending what you're making your card slots out of, these folds can use up more or less of your fabric. All right, so now we are ready to fold our card slot pieces. I'm using cotton woven, so I have a mini iron here that I find really helpful, and my wool pressing mat. So I'm going to press each of my creases. So I had you mark WS and RS for wrong sides and right sides, because that's the way we are folding it. So our first one is WS, so we are folding it wrong sides together. So I find it helpful to like peek on the side here, find the line, and then do the same thing on the opposite side. I have this metallic like hem gauge, which you could even put in to make sure it's straight. And because it's metallic, my iron won't ruin it. So I am going to press that seam. If you are using a fabric that you cannot iron, just try to crease it as best as you can. Okay, and then looking at the back again, our next fold is right sides, RS. So we are folding our fabric right sides together. This side is easier for me because we can see our line to make sure that we are folding it straight. Okay, and then you can see this is the front of our card slot. So this one went to the wrong side. This one went to the right side, and you can see our card slots are going to start to fold upwards. So if we go to the back again, we have a WS, so wrong sides. I'm going to look from both of the edges. And then I'm going to use my hem gauge to make it as straight as possible and press. Okay, our next one is right sides together. Some people also mark these in different colors. You also want to make sure that whatever marking pen you use is not going to bleed through to the front. So for me, since I'm using the water-soluble one, even if it does come to the front, I can use water to get rid of it. Okay, we have 2 more. We have another wrong side. Again, folding it here, making sure our sides are straight. Okay, and then our last one is right sides together. Give it a good press. All right, so now if we flip it over, we have these creases. So it will kind of want to follow those creases. So if I'm making sure that I'm keeping the edges lined up, it should fold up just like in an accordion. And as long as our edges are even, our card slots should be straight across. Some people mark the front of the card slot piece to make sure that you are lining up your card slot on both sides so it's even. So you could do that. You could also take a small ruler and stick it in, make sure that each card slot piece is the same. So you definitely just want to make sure that you are happy with your folds. Because now we are going to take this to the sewing machine and we are going to top stitch on each of our folds. So in order to do that, you are going to have to pull it away, sew it, pull it away, sew the top stitch, pull it away, sew the top stitch, because you want to make sure that you're not going all the way through and sealing your card slots closed. So I'm going to take it to the machine and do that. All right, and I forgot to mention before I went to the machine, I am top stitching at my widest stitch length, which is a 4 on my machine. And I am back stitching at the beginning and the end of all my seams. So I have top stitched across all 3, and now I'm going to keep it folded and I'm going to baste along both sides of my card slots just so they don't move for the next step. And I am basting at a larger stitch length as well. All right, so now that we have our card slot piece all sewed up, we are going to attach our side pieces. So you're going to take your piece E and F, and you are going, these are right side up, so you're going to put them right sides together with your card slot piece and clip them in place. So I'm not sure if you can tell on mine, it may look a little bit more plasticky. So that is the back side of the waterproof canvas. And the same thing, I'm going to line up the right hand side, and I'm going to do this step all at once at the machine. Okay, so once you have them both right sides together, you are going to take it to your machine and stitch along the side at the seam allowance given in the pattern with your regular stitch length. And you'll notice I have a little bit of extra fabric at the top. That is, again, normal. We will be trimming that in a minute. Mine is a little bit more than a half an inch, like 5/8. So depending on the fabric that you used, it will be a little bit different for everybody. Okay, so something that I forgot to mention before sewing is that, or clipping even the sides, is that these card slots are built to be very tight. I did not want my cards falling out if I'm using this as a wristlet. So you want to take a card and just make sure that your slots fit. So I already sewed one side and now I'm going to sew the other. And you might notice that I switched out to a Teflon foot. I find that when I am sewing waterproof canvas that has a plasticky PVC backing, that the Teflon foot goes over it much smoother. And I'm doing it at the seam allowance given in the pattern at my regular stitch length. Okay, again, now that both sides are stitched, we are going to open them up. If you are using a fabric that can be pressed and ironed, you can do that. I do not like pressing waterproof canvas. I don't think getting plastic warm is very good, so I never press my waterproof canvas. So you want to open them up before you top stitch, and again, just make sure that your card fits nicely in each of the spots. And as long as they are good, you are going to open this up and you are going to top stitch along on the edge here at 1/8 inch seam allowance. So now we have our finished lining piece with our card slot pockets. And I know that our bag is going to finish on an angle. However, I found that having the card slots on an angle made it much easier for me to access them. So again, I'm going to check one more time that my cards fit. If you were not so accurate with your seam allowance, you can see that there's very little wiggle room on each side, but it makes it that when you have this as a wristlet, you see I'm like flapping this around and my card is not falling out. And so what we want to do is everybody will have a different excess at the top, the amount. So I am going to use my pattern piece A, and you're going to line it up. And you can see that there might be like a little bit over here, there's some excess. So I am going to gently line this up. I have a bigger mat I should have grabbed for to cut, but that's okay. And I'm also going to trim the sides. All right, perfect. So now we have a pretty accurate new size A piece. Okay, so now that we've made our card slot piece and have trimmed it, we are going to attach our linings to our main panel exterior pieces. So I am going to put my card slot piece against what I want to be the back, I think. So if you have a directional piece, you definitely want to make sure that you flip it so the right sides are still facing up. And the card slots are going to be angled. And you can mark your, if you want, you can like fold and mark your centers on these pieces to help you, but they're lined up fairly even that I'm not going to do that. And I always clip because I don't want it to slip as I'm sewing around. Especially because one of these, like this is waterproof canvas and cotton woven on the inside, and the back is vinyl. So I find if I'm sewing two different materials, it's more likely to move. And so this is how my bag is gonna actually hang if I use it as a crossbody. So it might seem like a little funny because the card slots are to the side, but I actually found the zippers on top. So when you open it, it was much easier for me to like pull my card slots out at an angle. So this is something that if it bothered you, you could definitely like rework the math and adjust it. But it works for me, and I found that as a wristlet, it works, and they don't, like I showed you, the cards don't really slip out. And so you're going to do the same for the other lining. So it's just, again, the wrong side of the lining to the wrong side of your main exterior panel. I'm going to line up the sides and clip. So if you choose not to do the card slots, your both of your panels are just gonna look like this on the inside. And then once you have them clipped, you are going to baste the lining to your exterior at 1/8 inch seam allowance, just on the end to hold it together. All right, so now we are going to prepare our zipper gusset piece. Our zipper is cut slightly longer, so you could put your zipper pull on later or now. I prefer to do it now so I don't forget. And my right hand side is a little bit higher, so I'm going to start with that side first and then put in my left. And I try to line it up the best I can. There we go. All right, and I don't have any bubble here, so I know that I put the pull on evenly. So you're going to take your piece C, your exterior pieces, and I'm going to start with this one. If you have directional print, you want to be mindful. So this is technically my bottom piece. So I am going to start with that one, and I am going to put my zipper tape teeth side down, and I want my zipper opening from left to right. So I have my pull facing the left, or going towards the left. So I am going to clip my zipper tape teeth side down. And after I clip here, I move my zipper pull because I find that if I don't, you can get like a little bubble in your zipper tape. Okay, and so you are going to take this piece to the sewing machine, and we are going to baste along the top at 1/8 inch seam allowance, making sure that you move your pull out of the way when you get to your zipper foot. And then we are only basting because we are going to have to add this piece on next, but I prefer to baste it instead of sewing it like this. It's less likely for your zipper pull or your zipper tape to move and give you an uneven zipper. So I'm gonna take this to the machine and baste it on. All right, so I just basted on the zipper. So now we need our lining piece, and we are going to put our lining piece right sides down. So we are going to sandwich our zipper between the exterior and the lining. So the exterior piece and the lining piece should be right sides facing together, but the lining is right sides to the back of the zipper. And again, I'm going to move my pull out of the way, both as I'm clipping and while I'm sewing. All right, so now you are going to sew this on at the seam allowance given in the pattern. I realized that I was filming as a time lapse instead of a regular video. So what I was saying is that we just had sewed on our zipper. So it was like this. Our zipper was sandwiched in between our exterior and our lining. So now I have folded them open away from the zipper tape. And I have clipped all the way around. I find that waterproof canvas sometimes wants to bulk up and go closer to the zipper pull, and then it gets stuck on the lining. So I find that by pulling my fabrics away from the zipper and clipping all along the edges helps keep that distance from the zipper pull. And now we're going to top stitch along the zipper, and I'm top stitching at a 4 stitch length. And so I'm going to top stitch it here, and I'm going to go all the way around because my top stitch and basting length are the same exact, and I want to base my lining to this exterior piece. Okay, so now you can see that I have top stitched all the way around and then basted on the sides. So I flip it over, you can see it looks like that. And we are going about 1/8 inch away from the edges, so this will get hidden in our seam allowance. So we are going to repeat the exact same process that we did for this bottom for the other side of the zipper tape. Okay, so now we have finished our zipper gusset piece. So you want to take your regular gusset piece and line it up and see if it matches. Line up the edge. And you can see that mine is slightly off a little bit. So I want to trim this so that they are the exact same size, both the lining and the pieces. So depending on which size your zipper tape is, yours might line up perfectly or they might be slightly off. And this can also be influenced, like if you're using the paper pattern, did you cut it with SVGs? Did you use an accurate seam allowance? So don't stress. All right, so now we are going to make our D-ring connectors. This is made for 2, so you can use them for the crossbody, or you can only make 1 if you want for the wristlet. And what we're going to do is we are going to draw a line down the center. So I'm going to find my center here and mark it. And I'm just using a regular pen. It's not going to bleed through. You can use any marking tool to help you. You can also use double-sided tape to help this stick. And what you are going to do is you are going to fold to the center. And I'm going to clip it as I'm folding. I try to avoid double-sided tape because it can gum up your needle and then you have to use an alcohol swab to clean it. So I avoid it when I can, but you can definitely use it if it works better for you. Okay. And then, so now that it's folded to the center, I am going to take it to the machine and I am going to top stitch along this side here. And I'm also using a Teflon foot to help with the vinyl. All right, and then you are going to fold the next side in and repeat the process. Okay, so now we have our D-ring connector piece. I'm going to fold it in half and cut it in half because I plan on using 2 D-rings. Okay, so I have my 1/2 inch connectors here. I am going to thread the D-ring on and clip it. The same on this side. And I chose the vinyl instead of the 4-fold method, folding it into the center, because it doesn't make as much bulk. So depending what your machine can handle, mine's okay with this vinyl, but you may have to adjust what you use. So now you can either sew a line of top stitching right here as close to the D-ring as possible, or you could put a rivet, and that's what I'm going to do. So you could measure to put a rivet. I am just going to estimate. I have a handheld hole punch right here. All right, so I got that hole. I'm going to do the same for the other side. I try to center my hole between the stitching. Okay, and then I have this kit here. If you have directional fabric, which mine is directional, but these pieces are pretty plain. So I am going to put in the D-ring, the rivet, and add the cap. These are double cap rivets. I just got them from Amazon. There's different sizes. I don't know what size this is. You can see that it barely pokes through. So that is perfect for this. I'm using the smallest one in this kit. Okay, I'm just going to place it in for now. And I'm going to do the same for this one here. And that is because I have an arbor press that I'm going to use to set these rivets. Okay, so if you have just a hammer, this kit comes with this tool here. So it has 2 different sizes, a larger and a smaller. So I'm using the smallest rivet, so I'm going to use the smaller side. And you line up the rivet into that center, and you use the side that's concave. This one's flat, and you put it like this. And if you had a hammer, you can hammer on top of it to set it. But like I said, I'm going to use my arbor press. Okay, I have a ton of stuff going on over here where I keep the arbor press, but I'm going to show you real quick. So on this little part here, it spins, and there's a handle here that brings this metal piece down. So I am going to line up the base and press my rivet into the indent. Make sure that I have the concave side against my rivet on the top, and I am going to slowly bring down the handle. Once it's just resting in place, then I take 2 hands and I just pull it forward, and you can kind of feel the rivet pop into place. So this is another way. If you don't have a press, this just came from Harbor Freight. And then you do that for both your D-rings. Okay, so now we have our D-rings with the rivets or sewn across if you prefer to sew them. We are going to add them to our zipper gusset. So they are going to go on each end with your D-ring facing in. And you can take your ruler. I want to make sure that my rivet or if you've sewn a line is about a 1/2 inch in from the end. And if you did a 1/2 inch D-ring, it will fit perfectly in the space of your zipper. If not, if you did a wider one, you just want to center it. And the reason that I am leaving a 1/2 inch is because I want to make sure that when I'm sewing my seam allowance, it is not going to hit the rivet. Okay, so then we are going to base these on at 1/8 inch seam allowance. Oh, my clip just broke on me. Okay, so I'm going to bring that to the machine. All right, so your zipper or D-ring tab should hang a little bit over the edge, and you're going to repeat that for the other side. Okay, so now that we're finished with our zipper gusset piece, we are going to build our full gusset. So I don't trim my D-ring on the ends. I prefer to leave it. So that way it's better with the seam allowance, and even though vinyl doesn't really fray, I feel like it's more sturdy by leaving that extra fabric there. Okay, so you are going to take your lining piece B, which is your gusset, and you are going to put your zipper gusset right side up. So my lining is right side up, and my zipper gusset is right side up as well. And you are going to baste it in place along this short end here. Okay, and the reason that we are going to baste it is because now we are taking our exterior gusset piece and we are going to attach it. So if you want your lining to be a certain way, so mine says Australia, so you want to be mindful about the way that you put it on. And you are going to put it exterior side, or the correct side of the exterior, facing the correct side of the zipper. So your vinyl should be against vinyl, or your exterior should be against exterior. And now we're going to sew it at our full seam allowance. The basting was just so your lining does not slip. It's a little thick here, so I'm hand cranking it over the D-ring. And you want to make sure that you are back stitching in the beginning and the end. All right, so we are done with one side of our gusset. So now we are going to do the same exact process for our other side. So I personally move the exterior out of the way. I'm going to line up and clip my lining. Again, my lining is correct side up, and so is my zipper. I'm going to pin it in place. So I'm going to repeat the same process. I'm going to baste it here, and then I'm going to sew the rest of the gusset at the full seam allowance. Okay, so now your full gusset piece looks kind of funny. You have it sewn on both sides. Your exterior is on the top, your lining's on the bottom. So you are going to fold it out. So now our top piece is already basted with the lining, but we need to do the same for the bottom. And before we do that, I am going to clip on the side because we are going to top stitch along each side underneath the D-ring. So for me, I'm going to top stitch right here, and then we are going to repeat that on the other side. And once you top stitch across, then I pull my gusset. I kind of line it up fully. Make sure my lining and exterior are all lined up, and you can clip it around and you can baste all the edges. But first I'm going to top stitch. Okay, so I've clipped my gusset exterior to my lining. So now I'm going to take it to the machine. I have like an arm, so I took that off to make it easier. And I am going to baste the exterior to the lining. So now that we have finished basting the sides of the gusset exterior to the lining, we need to mark our centers of the gusset. So how we're going to do that is I line up the two seams underneath the D-ring first. And then I straighten it out, and I am going to take my marker and mark it. And I definitely recommend using a marker or writing tool, because if you snip it, we are going to be making more snips here. So if you clip it, then you might lose your mark. And we are going to do this for both sides of the gusset, top and bottom, and then left and right. So I'm going to flip this over and again straighten it out, mark the top, and the bottom. And then how I find the left and right, because you may think it's where our seam is, but that is not your center point. So you definitely want to make sure that you are marking these. So you line up your two marks. You can see mine is smudged a little bit. So I'm just going to line up the center of it. And mark again
the left and the right for both sides. Okay, and you can see that if we look at the mark on the side here, it's about 1.5 to 2 inches below our seam. Okay, so once you have all the marks, we are going to use them to line them up, but this bag is gonna be like this, like a diamond shape. So our centers are actually gonna sit on the corners of our bag. So just take a few minutes and I snip about 1 inch or so to the left and the right of the marks. And I go in about 1/8 of an inch. You don't want to go too far because you want to make sure that you leave enough space for your seam allowance, that your snips are not cutting into your seam allowance. So you are just going to continue snipping. So if you look close, or if I pull it, you can see that there's like little cuts. And that's going to help it go around our bag. And you're going to mark the snips on both sides of the gusset. So 8 different points. Okay, so I realized that I filmed a few things on time lapse instead of video. So I'm going to explain them now. So we just finished marking out our gusset, and you can see I have already sewn a side. So we have, and that was because of the mistake of accidentally filming. So we had marked our 4 sides, center points on the top, bottom, and 2 sides of our gusset. So we need to mark our main panel exteriors. And how I do that is I just fold them in half, corner to corner, squeeze them, and literally take the marker and just mark the inside. And then I do that for the opposite side and mark those corners. And we're marking the corners because our bag is going to sit in a diamond shape. So once you have all 4 corners marked on your bag, it's a little easier to see on this side, you are going to line them up on your gusset. So I already did this side. So pretend this is like your first one. Or just another tip to remember, make sure you open up your zipper. Because when you get to the second side, like I'm doing, if you don't open it, you're going to have trouble. We have to turn it out eventually. So you need that zipper open. So what you are going to do is your correct side, your exterior side, is going to be facing the exterior of your lining. And we are lining up all 4 of our corners first. And we are doing that. And usually when we do a bag with binding, you probably like ease your corners in last. And we've already placed the little snips into our gusset. That is going to help us. But for this instance, we are just marking our 4 corners. And we might need to move these later, or move them a tiny bit. We'll see after we start lining up the flat edges. Okay, so now that I got my 4 corners, now I'm going to start lining up my sides. And your first side might not be too bad, because you can stick your hand up on the other side of the gusset, but because I've sewn the other side, when you get to the second side, you can stick your hand inside to help you move things around and finagle it if need be. And I just work my way around the entire bag. And you'll see when you get to the corners, you'll be able to tell if your clip is in a good spot or if you need to move it a little bit. You could also staple your gusset on. If you use staple in the seam allowance. I don't do that. I don't like having to remove the staples afterwards. And my material is a little bit thick. You can see it's like fighting me a bit. So I'm just taking my time here again. This corner really doesn't like me. So you can see that that corner needs to be adjusted a little bit, or otherwise there was going to be a wrinkle right here. And you just keep working your way around the bag. And it does get a little bit harder as you clip all the way around, making sure that they are even, that they're in the right spots. But just take your time and make sure that you are happy with it. Don't rush this part. I find that that's when I have the most problems, is when I'm trying to rush the gusset. So like right this last side, I'm really taking my hand up inside. You can see here. And I was pushing up so that way it is matched up over here. It's so hard to do with the camera right in front of me. So I'm sorry if it's wiggling a little bit. And you can see here that I'm adjusting this corner. It wasn't fitting exactly how I need it to or want it to. All right. So now that I have it clipped, we are going to bring this to the sewing machine, and we are going to sew at a smaller seam allowance than we've been doing, because we're going to use our regular stitch length, but it's going to be like as if we're basting it. We're not going to use our regular stitch length until we attach the binding. So now I'll show you how to sew this part. Okay, so I am going to maneuver my bag underneath my presser foot. And I like to sew with my gusset facing right sides up. I find that easier that way. My main panel exterior is sitting flat against my machine, and I can help ease the gusset around. So you want to definitely make sure that you are back stitching at the beginning and the end. And you are going to carefully sew around the entire gusset. And I am using a stiletto, especially around the corners, to help ease it around. And I'm really taking, like, I use waterproof canvas, and it's kind of thick for the materials that I chose. So I'm really taking my time. Sometimes I even like hand crank to help me go around, slowly adjusting. And I'm going to work my way around the entire bag. Okay, so I just finished sewing the second panel around, and you can see it's shifted a little bit on the corners, like they didn't stay exactly where. So if this happens to you, I don't want you to be discouraged because sometimes it's not a big deal. So don't automatically grab your seam ripper. What I do is after each side, so after I sewed this side as well, I flipped mine to the right sides out. With the Decoville and the waterproof canvas, this is a lot stiffer than I thought it was going to turn out. So I really take my time, turn it inside out, poke out all the corners. If it's really difficult for you to turn, you could put a hair dryer in here, warm it up a little bit. It will make it more malleable. But I'm just being stubborn and getting a workout trying to turn it. There we go. Once it's past a certain spot, the rest kind of just wants to go with you. But that initial turn. And I had already checked the other side when I had sewn. So this was the side with the panel that I just added. So you could see how my corners were shifted a tiny bit as I was sewing. But if I'm looking at my corners here, I do not have any creasing or ripples. So I'm pretty happy with how these corners look. So once you check it and you're happy with it and you don't want to make any adjustments, you're going to turn it right side out again because we are going to now add the binding. So I'm going to do that. Well, continue to turn this out off screen. Okay, so now we are going to add our double fold bias tape. You can see I use a 1/2 inch wide kind. And I just get this at my local Walmart or Joann's. It is a cotton and it is bias tape. So it has some stretch to it. And it is double fold. So you can see this is what it looks like. And then it unfolds once. And then each side also unfolds. So this is what the pack looks like. I have some left over from another project, so I'm going to use that first. So I've given you measurements to cut your pieces to make sure you have enough in the pattern. But what I personally like to do is I never cut mine ahead of time. So starting on the bottom of the bag, so our gusset's facing up again, I unfold the bias tape completely. And I fold in the edge, like the short edge, because it is cotton. I don't want it to fray. And then I am lining that up with the edge of my bag. And I am going to clip that on, going all the way around the bag. And you don't want to trim your seam allowance before this. So really important to me to line up the edges. You don't want to clip your seam allowance because that's going to give your bag more structure. You want something to be able to clip this bias tape to. And if you cut if you trim your seam allowance, you won't have enough. So you can see I am just working my way around the whole bag. You can add more or less clips. There's some people who don't even clip at all. They just add it as they go around. That does not work for me. I like this cotton bias binding. I think it gives a nice finish. Some people use a 1 inch or 1 1/4 inch of waterproof canvas and they just fold it over and leave the edges raw. Some people use fold over elastic, and the same idea. They have one, they leave the edges and just fold it over once. I prefer this method because the others crease on me way too much. Okay, so now you can see I'm back to where we started. So what I do here is I then trim it down. I overlap it. You can see that I've overlapped a little bit. And this is so we can hide our raw edges. I realize that this came unfolded. There we go. So you want to make sure they're definitely folded. So then you are going to tuck in the fold on this side, the edge, and then clip again. So now I am going to take it, put it underneath my presser foot. Actually, I'm going to switch out from the Teflon foot to a regular foot first. And I'm going to sew again with my gusset facing up at my regular seam allowance given in the pattern. So when we initially put the exterior panels on, it was slightly smaller. So I'm using my full seam allowance. Sometimes I will sew in this crease, but I want to make sure that everything is sewn tightly. So I'm going to use that full seam allowance. Okay, I switched out my presser foot. So I am going to, oh look, I already popped off a clip down here. It's the one thing about clips, they can pop off. All right, so I'm going to move this under my presser foot, make sure that I am doing my full seam allowance, and I start ahead, or like I guess technically behind where my final seam is, because I'm just going to go right over it. So I'm using my regular stitch length. I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and the end. I'm using my left hand to kind of compress the rest of the bag down. And I have my stiletto, which is going to help me hold this fold and help me as I maneuver the bag around. And again, just take your time. I can use my stiletto here. Sometimes I will hand crank my machine, like to be more accurate. It all depends just how it's going. You can see that it compressed a little bit. So my needle's still down and I'm helping to manually turn the bag. I can put my presser foot back down. So you never want to maneuver your bag if your needle is not holding its spot. And for me, this is definitely the hardest part of this bag. What makes it a little difficult is because the bag is small, so this is like really fighting us. But on bigger bags, sometimes it's a bit easier. And I'm just helping move the gusset in. I'm always constantly like pushing it down as I'm going around the bag. And I purposely chose not to do this in a time lapse because I really wanted you to see that it does take time. It's not a fast process. It does take maneuvering the bag. And then when you get to the beginning, I just backstitch again over where I initially started. And I'm going to clip my threads. Okay, so we just finished sewing on, and now you can see that the double fold bias tape really wants to go back on its regular folds. So you are going to allow it to do that and fold it over onto itself and clip in place. So I'm going to turn it around because it might be a little bit easier to see. So you can see how it's already folding in on itself. And you are just clipping it down. And this is where we tuck the edges in. So that might have to finagle that a little bit to get it to look nice. And you can see, like, this is one of the reasons that I like the double fold bias tape. It really does already just want to fold over on itself. And I kind of just pop it up all around. And again, I go around and clip it. I find that works best for me. And I also changed out my thread for this part. I was using a variegated blue thread, but I have switched to a gray thread. And that's because now we're gonna top stitch on this, and just in case we don't catch the back or it wrinkles or it just blends better. And to me, this is the easier part of binding. We already did the hard part of attaching the sides and getting the initial part of the binding clipped. Okay, so again, once it is clipped all the way around, I'm going to put it back under my sewing machine. And again, I always do that top side up. And you can see that it's already sewed on here. So now I'm just going to top stitch along, and it should have folded over almost evenly, and it should catch your backside. And at this, since it's top stitching, we are using a longer stitch length. I still backstitch at the beginning and the end, but by using the different seam allowances, you shouldn't have any problems with your vinyl perforating. And you can see, for me, this is a much easier step. And again, I'm using my stiletto to help. If things like this looks a little bit loose, so I might check to make sure that the fold is correct. And I just continue all the way around. And for me, this is like the easiest part. And again, back stitch at the end. I'm going to trim it and then I will show you. And I actually think binding is very forgiving because it is going to get pushed up into the seams. So it doesn't need to be perfect. You can see it wobbles a little bit here. But let me show you the back side. So there's a couple spots where it is a little bit wrinkly. Around the corner, they could bend. The only thing that I might undo is you can see where this got turned up on itself. So it kind of went across. So I might unpick that and redo here. But otherwise, like, I don't really worry about this little crease here or if it's not like a perfect binding. This is all gonna, like, when we turn it out, be tucked up and you're really not going to see it. All right, so you just bind the other side now, and I'm gonna do that part off camera. Okay, so now that you have both edges bound, you're gonna turn your bag inside out. All right, so once you have your bag turned out, it should be like a diamond shape. And one of the testers actually recommended putting binder clips on the sides. And because some people experience like the edges rolling. So you really want to make sure that you are pushing your binding like into the edges, into the seam. And so yeah, if you let it sit with some binder clips for a little while, it will help really push that out. So now we have where, let's zip it up. If we want, we could add a wristlet strap to either side. I'm gonna show you how to make that wristlet strap in a second. Or you could add your chain purse or chain, turn it into your crossbody bag. All right, and you can see a little bit how it will hang. I'll show it to you after. So yeah, if you wanted to make your own crossbody strap or use webbing, you could definitely do that as well. So now I am going to show you how I make my wristlet straps. Okay, so this is how I make all my wristlet straps as long as my vinyl is not too thick. So we have our wristlet strap piece here, and I have marked the center all the way down. And I am going to do the 4-fold method, but I'm going to hide the seam so we don't have like a end on this here. This is not going to be raw. We are actually going to sew it so that seam is hidden. So the first thing that I do is tuck down all the edges, and you could use double-sided tape, but if you're using double-sided tape, do not stick it all the way to the edge here. We need to be able to open that back up. And I find clipping one side and then the second side easiest. Whatever method works best for you, or if you have your own preference to make a wristlet strap or webbing, Okay, so now you can see that I've left both of the edges, they're not clipped all the way to the end. So we got both sides turned in, and now our 4-fold method, so we are going to fold them on that center line. And I like to take clips from both sides. And sometimes clips can leave marks on vinyl, like a indent, but I personally have never had a problem with that indent going away after time. Okay, and you can see I didn't clip all the way to the ends, just the middle. Okay, and now I'm going to take my snap hook and I'm going to fold my edge in so I can put the snap hook on, but I still am going to have to open that. So I just move this down. I'll have to move some clips to give it some leeway. And I move it towards the center. It doesn't need to be all the way in the center. So now that our snap hook is on, we are going to open up both edges, short edges, and we are going to put them right sides together. So I'm going to clip them right sides together. And then I am going to sew across at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And I'm using my regular size stitch length. Again, definitely make sure to backstitch. Okay, and I'm trimming that. So now what I'm going to do is, you can see I have the circle here, my wristlet. I am going to open up the seams and I am going to fold them into the center. So now we have that area, that seam is hidden, and you won't end up with a wristlet that has a raw edge. If you do, you could use like a strap end or something there to cover it up, or tuck it under. But if you have an industrial, it might not be bad to tuck it under, but with my domestic, it can be rather thick. And then this can be rather thick here too, but I'm gonna probably hand crank in that spot. Okay, so once I have it clipped here, I am going to top stitch on both sides, but I'm going to switch out my thread first. Okay, so I switch out my thread to match. I put on a Teflon foot and I remove to expose the arm of my sewing machine. Since this is circular, it's easy for me to do. And I am going to start above where our seams join. And I do backstitch at the beginning and the end. You could hide the threads in the side, but I'm not going to do that. And I always start on the side that our edges, like that has the fold, where our edges come together. And as you're sewing, you'll see I'm moving the snap hook out of the way. And here, this is where the seam gets thicker because it's so much vinyl folded onto itself. So I can move this snap hook. I'm just trying to do it. Let me put the needle down so I don't accidentally move it. And it's definitely a tight fit with the vinyl that I chose. Maybe I should have pinched that seam first, like in a vise, or hammered it down. Because that, if you ever have thick seams, that can help. All right, there we go. And since it's so thick there, I'm just gonna hand crank it to help my machine. Alright, and I'm going to trim my threads and do that for the other side of the strap. Okay, so you can see that our wristlet strap is now top stitched on both sides. I always place my snap hook as close to that seam as possible because that's where it's thickest. And I am going to lay it against itself, and you can either top stitch across here or place a rivet. I am actually going to place a rivet. All right, so now we have our wristlet strap, and I can attach that here. And we're all done. Okay, so we just finished sewing up our Willow wristlet. And as you can see, when you look inside, once it's turned right side out, you cannot even see if the binding is really like wonky. So yeah, I hope you give it a try. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you put the card slots in or how they're working for you. Are you going to use it like a wristlet, or are you going to use it as a crossbody? So thanks again for all your support, and I really appreciate it.